Welcome to the Six Figure Personal Stylist podcast, the ultimate no BS business podcast for ambitious personal stylists ready to build a six-figure and beyond personal styling business. You won't hear the typical snooze fest business advice that most personal stylists get told all of the time. Nope, instead, I'll be sharing business building strategies that will help you create a killer personal brand, a cult following of loyal personal styling clients, and make a ton of cash while creating lasting style transformations for your clients. I'm Nicole Achi, your host and a former personal stylist of 14 years who built a lucrative styling business in 3 major cities, but only after spending years trying to crack the six-figure styling business code without burning out. And now I'm here to tell you how to do exactly the same. Let's get into it.
If you saw the title of this podcast and you thought, there's no way I am ever going to like sales, stick with me because I have something for you. I want to offer you 3 major mindset shifts about sales that I believe if you take on board will change your business. Deal? Okay, deal. I'm going to pretend that you said yes. So I am really passionate about talking about sales, both because it's something I had a terrible relationship with in my brain, and because I have invested this year, 2024, a lot of money in learning how to sell better. Why? Because you do not have a business if you do not know how to sell, and if you're not selling. You just don't. You have a hobby. So that is a harsh reality that I was given a long time ago. And what I wish I had had with that harsh reality, that harsh realization, was the understanding that I was fully in control of how I felt about sales. Because I think that we, specifically as women, tend to think that it's a bad thing to be salesy or it's bad to talk about our services, when the reality of the situation is, if you have an account on social media that isn't private and isn't personal and it's clearly a business account, people expect you to sell to them. That is literally why they are there, because you are a business. You are an authority, and authority figures in a field sell. They sell their knowledge, they sell their expertise, they sell their point of view. I also think that when I talk to stylists, there's a lot of shame around this idea that you would sell your services. So I want to break down how incredibly illogical and actually harmful that view is. So if you feel like it is a bad thing, and most people do mean it as a bad thing, to say that somebody's coming off as salesy, what do we really mean? I think what we really mean when we say that is somebody that's pushy, somebody that's almost like doing something to people against their will. When if you think about it, everybody is, say, on social media that's following you, is there, again, both because they know you're a business, it should be pretty obvious when they look at your account, and because they are consenting to that. So the idea that if we then talk about our business on a business account, we're being pushy or sleazy or some other negative attribution that we associate with sales, that's then associated with us, is really something I want you to consider, because it doesn't even make sense. If you are a stylist that feels like and knows that your service has a deep impact on people, then the question is, why would you be hiding that from people? Don't you then have an ethical obligation, really, to share about what is possible for people if they buy your service, if they work with you? When you don't, what you're doing instead is allowing more and more people in the world who need to show up every day more self-expressed to then walk around not being self-expressed because you are not sharing how you can help them. It's really often the difference between somebody having a breakthrough in their life or not your decision to sell. And I bet you've not thought of it that way. In fact, I don't know if you've ever thought of it this way at all, which is that, is it ethical to not sell when you want to have or share that you have a transformational business? I don't think it is, because if you have the solution to something that could drastically change the quality of someone's life on a day-to-day basis, which I believe personal stylists that are great stylists, excellent stylists have, you are literally doing something that is hurting people by not selling it. Now, what I think also gets in the way is how we think you're supposed to sell. I think that there's this idea that when you're quote unquote selling or you're not selling, if you don't just talk about how great your service is and how great you are, when that's not going to get, that could be selling, but that's not actually what gets people to buy. It's explaining the transformation. It's talking about how in-depth and how intentional the work you do with clients is. That's actually selling. And what's so fascinating to me is how many stylists don't realize that every single day when they're working with a client, whether it be on Zoom or in a dressing room or in the client's closet, when they are saying to the client something like, hey, just try this on. I think this would go well with XYZ in your closet. Give this dress a try. I know you've been anti wide leg pants, but I promise that if you try them, I'm going to show you how they work for your body, whatever. You're selling. You're making an argument and you're making a case to try something that client wasn't going to try before. And one of the reasons why I'm actually investing so much of my own money and my own time in sales training with my coaches this year is because I want to be an example for all of you about how selling can look when it's done from a place that's ethical, when it's done from a place that is loving, when it's done from a place of truly having your client's best interest in mind. And because stylists every single day are actually selling people on things, I want to redefine for you that you actually probably are good at selling. You are, and you don't even realize it because you have associated, as most of us have, the idea of selling with something bad, right? Like with something wrong. But yet you have a business, and yet you have a business that I hope you believe in. You have a process that I hope you believe in. And you believe in it because you've seen that it actually makes a difference. So when you look at it like this, when you realize wait, as a stylist, every time I'm, convincing someone, even if it doesn't feel like that, right, to try something they wouldn't, or to give a color a try that is not in their usual repertoire, or to just wear the outfit and see how it feels before they write it off. Whenever you do those things, you are selling, you're building an argument. And when you don't realize it, you lose the opportunity to redefine how you, quote, sell publicly, or how you do the same thing one to many. And that's where I think we get in our head, I could buy, I'm sure people are listening thinking I could buy that I'm selling someone on this idea of trying something new in the dressing room or putting together an outfit in their closet. I can buy that, but it's not the same when we're talking about selling my service. And that's usually because there's money involved. Even if you haven't overtly said this out loud, I want you to check in and see if what I'm saying feels right. It's one thing to sell an idea. It's another thing to sell an outfit, right? It's another thing to sell. But when you're selling something that requires someone to give you money, it activates something in you that makes you feel like, quote, sales is bad, right? And what's really interesting about this is that people that pay attention. That's why when you are giving away free content that is very tip-based and here's how to edit your closet, which doesn't really make sense if you're a stylist who actually helps people edit their closet for a living. Why are you telling people to do that? A, they can get it on Pinterest, and B, you're literally undercutting what you sell. So there's something to consider. But when you are talking to people and trying to sell your services and you're thinking oh, this feels so hard, this feels so gross, I don't know what to say, it's usually not because it's gross or weird. People that are there are waiting for you to talk about your service. It's gross and weird to you because you are not really sure if what you're selling is worth it often. And I definitely have dealt with this in my career as a stylist. All it takes is one or two clients that the experience doesn't go as amazing as you hoped, even if they didn't necessarily have a bad experience, to doubt yourself. Is this worth it? Am I really making the impact I want? Right? But I want you to know, if you've ever felt that way, A, it's normal. And B, that's just what it means to own a business. It doesn't mean that it's objectively true that what you're selling isn't worth it. It means you're having a moment of doubt because you're a human with a human mind, and that's okay. But to build the argument in your own head that, quote, sales is bad, I can't sell on stories, when I'm selling things, it's, a problem, people won't follow me, people will unfollow me. They might, but a lot of the energy that you're bringing to it is driving those unfollows. The fact that you're not getting better at your sales message is what's driving the unfollows, not the selling itself, not the concept of selling, not the fact that it's just existing. It's how well you're doing it. It's how you're relating it to the people that you're talking to. And this is why you cannot do sales and marketing well as a stylist if you don't know who you're talking to. So for every stylist that's afraid to niche is another stylist who got over that fear and is now, quote unquote, selling effortlessly. Because when you know who you're talking to, you're not just selling your packages, and you don't even have to sell hard because your marketing and the way that your content is going is selling for you. So I don't do a lot of selling on my accounts. I mean, once in a while, like recently, I just opened up 1-hour calls on my calendar, which I never do, as like a birthday promo for the styling consultancy turning 1. And I opened it up, and within 24 hours, 10 spots were gone. I made $5,000 in 24 hours, probably less because obviously I wasn't selling overnight when I was sleeping. So let's say it was 8 to 10 hours. And that's because I don't, quote unquote, sell hard all the time. My content sells every single day for me. This podcast sells every single day with me. And what am I doing? I'm relating to stylists and being like, I get you. I understand. Not just because I was a stylist, but because I spent hours studying stylist content. I spent hours looking at my clients' business plans. I spent hours with stylists every day because yes, I was a personal stylist for sure. So I have a sort of an understanding and an understanding of the language and the client stuff that comes up. But I'm not every other stylist. I haven't been in every market. I've been in DC, Boston, and New York. I know those markets personally, and I know other markets from dealing with my clients. So I've had to learn about other markets because of the clients I've worked with. I've had to learn about how other stylists do their styling process. I've had to learn and study stylists and kind of notice the patterns, because just because I did something one way doesn't mean everybody does it that way. And that doesn't mean everybody views it the same way. Not all of us view styling the same way. And that's what's so amazing about it. And so you have to sell people every day on your view of styling, your view of your client, your view on what's possible for the client you want to work with. And then the quote selling of your services becomes so easy because you've been selling every day. So I want you to try to divorce the idea that selling is only something that happens when someone gives you money, which it is. And people should give you money because, again, people that pay attention. That's it. That's it. If you want someone to really pay attention, they need to make an investment of their time and their money. And if you're not making it something that people aspire to or want to get to with the way you talk about your services, with the way that you price your services, with the way that you present yourself online, with the way that you create marketing messages, then yes, you're going to have to quote unquote sell in what we think of as a forceful way. But that is optional based on what you do when you're not selling. And by selling, I mean saying, I have availability here, click this link and pay me. That's not exactly what selling is, but that's a very concrete way of looking at selling. So if that's what you're fearing, then I want to offer that if you do micro sales in terms of changing your client's mindset, making it clear that you're for them, creating content every day that sells them on the idea that personal styling is going to change their life by demonstrating how it's helped your other clients in a way that isn't superficial, in a way that isn't just throwing around the word confidence. I want to see the word confidence within a very clear context. Like this client now felt confident to present to the board of directors, which then got her a promotion that was blah, 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 right? I'm using the word confident, but I'm using it in a context that's so specific that now my brain can be sold on the idea that maybe confidence is possible for me, because if I'm someone watching that content, I want to know, well, what is it like? What will this confidence get me? What will this confidence do for me? Especially if I'm someone watching your content as a potential styling client that has never felt confident. Most human beings, particularly women, have never felt consistently confident about themselves, in their bodies, in their style. So when stylists say things like feel confident broadly, you are literally saying nonsense to most people. They have no experience with it. It's like me trying to explain algebra to my 2-year-old. It's just gonna go right over her head. And that's what stylists do every single day. And that's what stylists think, well, other stylists are doing it, so let me do that. You need to sell people on the idea that confidence is possible for them. That's selling. Just like saying, here, click here, it's my offer. Because no one's gonna click there if you haven't already sold them on the idea that you're for them. So I think what's really important is that while marketing and sales, like messaging is marketing, that is a form of selling. And within your marketing, you're selling people on working with you, on how they should think about themselves. You're also basically selling who they should be to be an ideal client for you. So a lot of the work that I do in my own marketing and messaging is preparing stylists to be a good client for me. Because sure, I've gotten clients that were not perfect fits. I've gotten probably 2 since this business opened. And I would say only 1 was truly not a good fit. And I look back and I think, wow, if I had had some of the podcast episodes that I have out now, if I had talked about certain things on my stories, perhaps that wouldn't have been a good client. That client would have been repelled. And I think that's true, that you also want to sell people on not being your client. You want to sell people on what are the beliefs that people could have about themselves and about the styling process that make them a terrible fit for you. I've done episodes about the difference between transactional styling and transformational styling. If you haven't gone and listened to those, please take a look at those, because you need to sell people on which type of stylist you are. And by doing that, you're going to sell them on whether or not they're a good fit to work with you. So our messaging is really what primes people for the sale. And the sale is literally when you say, hey, do you want to buy this? Or hey, you can buy this, right? That's the actual quote selling. But all of the things that happen before the money is given to you or the transaction happens financially are also micro sales. So marketing really encompasses the activities that create awareness, that generate new leads to your business, and that build relationships. And when you're building relationships, you're creating trust. And I think when we often think about sales being sleazy, we think about it in this very cold selling kind of way, like just a cold email that's not personalized and just is like, hey, buy my stuff, right? It's like very aggressive. It kind of comes out of left field. But I have had people write me cold emails that were so wonderful. I have hired them because they took the time to build the relationship, even within one email, to say like, hey, I listened to your podcast, or I was on your website and I loved X, Y, and Z. And they're real specific. Like, I was listening to this podcast, and at this point in the podcast, you talked about this, and it really hit me like this. And I really want to work with business owners that are like you. You know, are you looking for a Pinterest manager? Or are you looking for a graphic designer or whatever? And I've replied and been like, yeah, actually I am. And spent thousands of dollars from cold emails. But did I do it because it was a pushy? No, I did it because a relationship was created. And even if that person said, even if I said no to that person, a conversation would have been started that could have led to a sale later. And I think that's really important too, is that we look at sales as a one-time event, and it's not. So the next really big mindset shift I want you to really sink into, because it was life-changing for me, is that sales is not a one-time event. It's a process, and it's a process that is built through relationships. My coaches taught me this, and when they did, it blew my mind. And it also changed radically how I showed up in my business, because I was treating sales calls as like, you either want it or you don't. You're either in or you're out. And I really didn't do a lot of follow-up. I did a lot of follow-up when I was a stylist in the beginning, as most of us tend to do because we are hungry and we need business. But as my business got bigger, both as a stylist and in this business, I just really kind of had stopped. I just stopped like following up. I didn't realize it, but there probably was some arrogance behind it. And when I started with my coaches and they were like, that's kind of like an attitude problem you want to rethink. And they really showed me this view of like, not everybody buys in the same way. And some people take more time. At this point in my career, I'm a pretty quick buyer. Like I'm very good at knowing what I need. I'm very good at knowing, who's a good fit for me. I know what questions to ask. Have I ever been disappointed? Yes, but I still, like I've said in earlier podcasts, I am responsible for all of my results in my life. So even if I buy something and it's not exactly what I wanted, I still believe I'm capable of getting a result that will be beneficial to me. So that makes me a very different buyer. I also believe in spending. I probably spend the most money in my life in my business. Why? Because my business is so important to me and my clients are so important to me. And I want to give them an incredible experience. So I will spend $50,000 in a year on sales coaches so that I can then give that to my community. I don't really think about selling as me taking someone's money. I think about it as me being able to pass on hundreds of thousands of dollars, years of blood, sweat, and tears that went into a business that I made successful after years of struggling. It's what allowed me to build this business to 6 figures in 1 year. And when I look at it that way, I'm so excited to quote sell. I'm also so excited to buy. And those things are connected. The type of buyer you are is often the type of a buyer you attract. So I'm not saying that every bad experience with a client or every bad experience on a sales call is your fault. But I am going to say that there is a direct correlation to the stylists who have gotten on calls with me and told me, oh, my business isn't going anywhere. I really want to work with you, even though they've seen the prices before sales call. And them telling me that the biggest problem in their business is they're attracting clients that are, quote, cheap, they're being price shopped, that people are trying to bargain with their services, and then them saying to me, oh, you're too expensive. So they're doing to me with full knowledge that they know what the prices are before they get on a sales call. They're then doing exactly what someone else has been doing to them and why their business can't take off. Because they're getting so many pricing sales objections. And then they're mirroring that in sales calls. I'm sure it's not just with me. I don't take it personally. I don't take anything personally at this point in my career. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I love to work with you if you're all in, but if you're not, then great. Price or otherwise, fine. Not a problem. Right? Not a problem. The world's a big place. If you change your mind later, I'll be here. If we're still a good fit, we might not be. But it's not a coincidence. I can name 6 different individual sales calls I've had in 6 months where I have gotten the exact same experience. And I'm not upset about it, but it is so fascinating to me that they are on the call, fully informed of the price of the service, telling me I'm too expensive, and then telling me the reason they're having problems in their business is that people are getting on calls, wasting their time and telling them they're too expensive. It's like, you will attract the type of client that you are. And I've seen this because I used to do, like, years and years ago, I'd be like, oh, I'll just do the $500 thing. You know what never got me? More than $500. If you invest small amounts, you get small results. Not even because of the work, maybe the content's amazing that you're getting. Even if it could be $500 you're spending and the content's worth $5,000. But if you are not all in, if the price isn't high enough to sell you on going all in, then it's useless. It's not enough money. It's actually a disservice for someone that's making content worth, say, $5,000 to be charging only $500 because the person is not psychologically bought in. And this is why sales is so important, because sales is not just about you getting money in your bank account. It's about somebody else getting a result, because when people pay, they pay attention. I know I've said it multiple times in this podcast, but what I'm trying to show you in terms of just rewiring your thinking about sales is that it's not just money that you get from a client isn't just about you. It's also about what's possible for the client because they gave you the money. Because at the end of the day, you can always make more money, but you cannot get more time back. So you should be creating an experience that's worth not just their money, but their time. And then you should share about that and micro sell that experience in your marketing every day, so that when you put up the sales link and say, hey, I have availability, people are ready to buy. They're ready to buy like they were from me, and you can make $5,000 in 8 hours. So I don't even care about the money. I care about, I'm not proud about making that type of money. I'm proud about having a place that I've worked really hard to build relationships such that I can do that, such that people trust me enough the trust is so great that it's reflected in that money. I don't view money as like so great. I have all this money in my bank account. I mean, I like money, but it's not like after a while, it only gets you so far in terms of happiness. But I really view it as like, I view high sales numbers as the ability of how many more people I'm helping because of my sales numbers. And when my sales numbers are down, I worry about it from the standpoint of like, that means there's stylists out there that are struggling that I could be helping. And even if I gave away my services or my courses for free, like I've actually considered doing a free, like an entire course that's free, that's just helping stylists, get their first 5 clients, because that's not really the stylist that I help. And I've had multiple business coaches say, well, if you do that, then that's probably not the kind of client you're going to want later because they won't be bought in. How many times have you spent like $200 or $100 or $99 on something? And then because it was so cheap, you never looked at it. You never did it. How many online trainings and courses do you have that's like a graveyard because you impulsively bought it, but then you never finished it? But I bet if you spent $50,000 on that sales training, you'd do it. I bet you'd do it. And so that's what I'm trying to say. Like, the way that you price things, the money that you quote take from people, and I hate that word, but the exchange of money is just as much for the person giving you the money as it is for you. Because when people aren't giving you money, people aren't being helped. When people aren't giving you money, you're playing small. So I want you to understand that sales helps both people. It is a relationship and it is an exchange of energy, which is why we have to look at our own energy and how we're behaving in the world. And why it's important to realize it's not a one-time event, because relationships aren't a one-time event. Plenty of people have gotten on sales calls and really needed to think about whether they wanted to work with me, both as a stylist and as a business consultant. And that's fine. Like, I'm never going to get you on a call and be like, you have to decide right now, because people make decisions in a different way. But when I was my brain was like rewired by my coaches to look at sales as an experience that unfolds over time, I could really relax on my sales calls because I was just having a conversation with someone. I was just starting to understand what's going on in their world and in their head. And then over time, if I check in with them or I follow up with them, I usually close people. Like I'd say like 90% of the time, people later on are like, I thought about our conversation. Let's work together. And if they do, great. And if they don't, that's fine. It's really not a problem. But give people the space to make that decision and give people the opportunity. Because some people I've noticed are very surprised when you follow up with them because they think, even if you don't say it on a sales call, they think like, well, I didn't buy on the sales call. And then they're surprised when I follow up and I'm like, hey, are you still interested? They're like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you so much. Because people assume they get off the sales call, it's over. Like, oh, blew my chance. And they're embarrassed to come back, which is, I never want anyone to feel that way, right? We all learn. We all are at a different pace. And so sales is a relationship. It's an ongoing experience. And if you thought of sales that way, how would it change your business? How would it change you? That is something. And how would it change the behaviors? How would it change the behaviors that you are engaging in? Would you start following up more like I did? Just because it actually makes people feel more taken care of? That's another thing that I think we need to remember. If you're selling ethically, it shouldn't feel like this forced situation. It should feel like you're giving people an opportunity to express themselves, to share their concerns, to share their excitement, to share their reservations. And then you're just answering those concerns. If you can, say, hey, this is why this would be a good fit for you based on that concern, then you have an ethical obligation to say that. If you can't, then you say, hey, I don't think this is a good fit. I have told many people, I am not a good fit for you. You are not ready. When you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll be able to get the most out of this investment. But we couldn't have even had that conversation if we didn't have a sales conversation. So it's really about how you choose to show up in the sales experience and how you choose to behave and how you choose to stay unattached to the outcome that will make all the difference. Because I think often we think sales is icky or gross because the energy behind it can feel a little desperate and gross. But if the energy behind it is, I'm so excited to have the opportunity to work with you, what do you say? If it's a no, that's fine. We're still going to have a relationship. I'm still going to answer your DMs. I'm still going to like your stories because it isn't personal. Then doesn't have that energy of like forcefulness that I think we tend to think is icky. So I want you to really think about the things we've talked about today. Like, are you selling in advance every day, not just your offer, but the possibilities of somebody working with you? Are you thinking of sales in a broader way, in a more all-encompassing way, in a way that feels good? Or are you deciding that it's sleazy? Are you someone who isn't the best buyer? And could you be a different type of buyer that then calls in a different kind of client? Are you viewing sales like I was as a one-time event instead of a process and a relationship? And are you already, right this minute, potentially a really good salesperson? Because my experience of stylists and the work they do with their clients is that they actually are exceptional salespeople, but they don't have a definition of sales that allows themselves to see themselves that way. So they need to rewrite it. Just like your clients who feel like they're not stylish, they weren't born with those genes, need an opportunity to rewrite their definition of themselves and how they view their personal style. You have the opportunity today, after listening to this, to rewrite your own view of selling, to create a view of selling and a definition of selling that's ethical and that helps people and that helps the people that give you money as much as it helps you who's getting money. So I hope this is helpful. Thank you for hanging out with me. We will definitely be talking about sales more in the future, and I look forward to chatting with you next time.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It turns out that social proof is actually pretty important. So if you could help me out, I'd so appreciate it. If you just had a quick free moment and could leave me a rating or review on the podcast app, that would be killer. And even better, if you wanted to share this episode on Instagram and tag me, that would totally make my day. And it would bring so much more awareness to the podcast and would help other stylists just like you who are looking to build lucrative styling business, because the better each of us does, the better all of us do. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll chat with you next time.